Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is Unsung Season 12, and this episode is about the boys. I have to say, I am so glad that Unsung did this episode because I always wondered what happened to them, because I remember the boys being really big when I was like in kindergarten to like third grade. I used to hear them all the time, and I definitely remember, like, in kindergarten, hearing Gal My Heart on the radio, and then seeing the girls sing it, sing the song on the playground. I mean, the boys definitely was a group that were very big in my early years, so it was great to actually, hear their story and then see how much of a fascinating, much of a fascinating group that they were, because they not only were talented as far as performers, but they were even talented as far as being writers and producers and, creating, their own music. I mean, and this is like at early ages that they were literally in control of their destiny. And I think they owe a lot of credit to that, to, their upbringing with their mother and father. I mean, especially their dad, because their dad talks about in this episode how he didn't want them to have an inferiority complex. He wanted them to have a superiority complex. And that's even something I strive for as a black man, too. So that was very remarkable. And, they even also talk about, some of the, trials and tribulations that they had to deal with, not just with their family, but also with their career. And how, as of now, the brothers are more tighter than ever. They have a close bond. And they're enlightened and very intelligent, and they're all still creating to this day. And that was, rather amazing. I mean, on this episode, Shanice Wilson was one of the commentators, Jason Weaver, Rosie Perez, who was their choreographer, and we definitely know Rosie Perez is not to be played with when it comes to dancing. I mean, she was definitely, one of those, star dancers on Soul Train who transcended into a career of choreography. And, Rosie, and then like Rosie was also the main choreographer on In Living Color. So they had Rosie Perez on their team. It's no wonder why their dance steps were, why their dance steps were so clean, because Rosie don't play. Rosie is definitely a phenomenon, and I definitely put her in a class with, dancers like Debbie Allen, who, really brought life to dance and really just knew how to create a dance ensemble. Both of them had that gift. But then we get introduced, to, the Abdul Samad brothers. The eldest is Kyrie, then it's Hakeem, then Taj and Bilal. They're from L.A., and their parents was Angela and Jerry. Now Jabari Abdul-Mazad, because he, joined the Nation of Islam. So, and, their mom even said that there was a complete change after he joined the Nation of Islam, because he started throwing out pots, like, if the pig was cooked in this pot, we're not using it no more. Because it became a life of discipline. It became a life of understanding not only your individuality, but sense of self. And I definitely respect that. And I definitely uphold that, because me being a black man, it's very important that you have a sense of who you are and a sense of your power and your sense of being. And it's great because he instilled that in his 4 young sons. And, they pretty much, from an early age, never thought with that inferiority complex. And that's a blessing, because, unfortunately, we still have this problem within our community where we think, we have this inferiority complex, where we don't see ourselves as being great or see ourselves as being better than who we are. And it's actually, I actually admire their dad, that he instilled those things in his boys, and this was one of the main driving forces to what made them successful. They even talk about how they actually started performing at Venice Beach, and they were making good money. I mean, they said that the first year they made $12,000. The second year they made $24,000. So the father pretty much saw that, wow, there's something here, and they started their own company, and so he literally started them as businessmen at a very young age. While I'm learning my ABCs, these young boys were literally, building an empire. And it's funny because that's exactly what I'm working on now, is establishing mine. So it was actually, inspiring to see this Unsung episode, to really see how strong-minded and strong-willed these young boys really were. And here I was a kid listening to them on the radio, not realizing that, wow, they were way beyond their age. They were wise beyond their years. And that's always a blessing. And definitely, I remember when Down My Heart came out in '88, I actually started kindergarten that year. I remember living in Fontana, California. I went to, Chaparral Elementary School. That was the first school I attended. And I remember Down My Heart always playing on the radio. I remember seeing the video on MTV, and just seeing them everywhere. So they were really big, And it's funny because that song was really big when I started school. And I remember every time that song came on, all of us would start dancing. So it was really, it was pandemonium, just from the start. I mean, that song went #1 R&B, and it also was in the top 20 on pop. That was the detonator to their success. They hired Rosie Perez as their choreographer, and Rosie was pretty much like Debbie Allen was on the show Fame. She was not to play. She didn't play around. She was like, oh no, you missed a step. We're doing it all over again. She pretty much was really tough, but it made them stronger. And these boys would do backflips and then still get back in the mic and start singing and still be in perfect pitch. That's how talented they were. And I remember the song Lucky Charm. That was definitely a jam. And I remember them being on different TV shows. Like, I remember seeing them on Give Me a Break, and I definitely remember them being on, on Amen, and also I definitely remember when they were on A Different World. I mean, me and my best friend Kenneth, shout out to my boy Kenneth Toots of the K2 Spot. Me and him definitely, remember this episode on Different World when, Ron's band was actually in this talent show, and the Boys was the other group that they were competing against, and the Boys won, and then they started getting real cocky and got real smug with Ron and Kim and the other band members, kind of like joking at them because it's like, oh wow, you guys sounded good. I know my grandparents will love y'all, and it was kind of cute that they were like young veterans, and they literally transcended music and transcended pop culture at a very early age, and the ceiling was high. And it's they also talk about that on their second, because the first album, Down My Heart was actually created by by Daryl Simmons, Kenny Babyface Edmonds, and L.A. Reid. So they definitely had that Babyface and L.A. Reid sound at an early start, and they wanted to use that same formula for the second album. But the second album, they wanted to do more producing and more writing and have more control of their sound. And they had signed with MCA Records, and at the time Gerald Bugsby was the head of MCA. And when he actually left and went to Motown, he actually took the Boys with him, along with Johnny Gill and a few others. So Gerald Bugsby, definitely, wanted to use the same formula because, it was success the first time. It's kind of a trend in the business. But they wanted to hone their own sound, and they wanted to have more control of their own image as well as their own music. And they actually created a song and took it to Gerald Bugsby, They played it for him, and he was like, "Put it out." And their song that they created was "You Got Me Going Crazy," and that was definitely a really big hit. I definitely remember that song, and I remember that was the song that they performed on A Different World in that episode I was telling you about. So yeah, that was like a good. That was, and the music video was everything too, because here it is. They were like literally, paying homage to all of these mainstream acts, like Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, Madonna, Milli Vanilli, and Bobby Brown. So the video was just showing them doing all these caricatures, which was very kiddish, but then yet it worked, and it was very playful. It was fun. It was exciting, and it was great that these young boys, young black boys, were transcending, music and pop culture at a very early age. I mean, it's something to be admired and to be upheld. So I thought that, yes, it was awesome, and I definitely remember that song. And then pretty much, afterwards they ended up going on tour, and they were literally like the headlining act. And then they did this song, a thing called Love, where they did the video in Japan, and they also had LaFace producers, I think, were on that song. But it did get some buzz, but it didn't do as well. And then they ended up doing the song Thank You for the Funk. I remember when that one was out. I think I was in 2nd or 3rd grade when that one came out. So it was like these boys were somewhat, I was somewhat around their age, or they were a little bit older than me at the time, but, it was cool seeing kids like me be successful on TV. So it was inspiration to a young guy like myself who is building my own success and, building my own territory, and yet these young boys were doing that at a young age. That's definitely something to be respected. And I remember Thank You for the Funk, because I remember I liked the video, because here they were paying homage to the godfathers of funk, like Parliament and Funkadelic, Bootsy Collins, and, they was pretty much doing the dance steps, Sly and Family Stone, just goes to show you their musical knowledge. They knew who the pioneers were. They knew who inspired them, and they always paid homage, to the acts that helped them to inspire them to be who they were. So definitely commendable. And then, like, they also, talked about that, even though they had, the image of the perfect family, they did have a lot of issues, dealing with their father, who was a very strict disciplinarian, and then it kind of got out of control when their father started to dabble in drugs. And they talked about how, because we even see that they started to trickle down with the boys, because they showed them on video where, I think it was Hakeem who was getting aggressive with one of his brothers. So that anger and frustration started to trickle down to how they treated each other, and that's when their mom decided to remove them from the house with their dad, but they still loved their father, and they still, cared about their dad, and they still respected him, because he was one of the main people that taught them everything they knew. He's the one that taught them discipline, about, being strict, and about having, order. And honestly, I wish I had that growing up, because I wouldn't have some of the battles I had today if I had that. So, it's not all bad. But then again, when it became too much, they had to separate from him. They said that, yeah, we loved our father, but then we also loved peace as well. So they definitely discussed that. And they also talked about, after a while they wanted to graduate from boys to men, but then due to the fact that their ceiling was high and they reached that at an early age, how far were they going to go? Because it was like they had this high standard, and the industry wanted them to constantly meet that. And here it was, they were evolving to young men, and they no longer, after a while, didn't have the same audience anymore. Because we definitely know how it is, the audience gets fickle. And after a while, they decided to leave Well, because you know, after they, you know, were with MCA, they went to Motown because, you know, Gerald Busby took the boys along with him, and they had some hits there. But then after a while, they weren't able to, you know, meet some of the expectations that the label had put on them, and it got to the point where it became too much for them because it said that, you know, the pandemonium after a while became too much, and it got to the point where the boys didn't want to do it anymore, so they still had production obligations. And Hakeem is definitely like a very good producer, and he even said that, you know, them royalty checks have been keeping me going. And I'm like, more power to you, brother. Them residuals is everything, because I'm definitely trying to establish that too right now. So I definitely take my hat off to these guys because they learned the game at an early age. A game that I'm just learning, you know, now in my 30s. So, it does kind of show you right there that, yeah, you know, I wish I mean, in all honesty, I wish I had some of the right people around me earlier, because I probably would have made smarter choices earlier. But no need to get on the past, and now is now. But that was something that I definitely admired, that they definitely had that state of mind of building business and building a longevity, not just, you know, getting into it just for instant gratification. They really were, you know, ahead of their time as well as their years. So definitely, I really enjoyed this episode, and I really enjoyed their commentary. They pretty much, you know, are no longer called the boys. They're now called the Sons of Light, which I think fits them perfectly because they're all enlightened young men who have a sense of self. They have a sense of who they are. They have a freedom of creativity and freedom of expression, and that's definitely something to be admired, especially as a black man. So, you know, I can say that their father did an amazing job of raising these guys, and you know, they at one point got caught up in the Hollywood life, and that's when, you know, their mom, you know, sent them to go live with their father because she didn't want them to get lost into that Hollywood glam, because people can get lost in it and never come back. So the fact that they had a strong mother as well as a strong father kept them grounded, and it also helped to keep them focused, and they didn't, you know, get lost into the life of being, you know, rich and famous, you know, because we definitely see a lot of it. We definitely see a lot of those stories. But with this story, it was a story of redemption. I mean, they talk about they got with this guy Baba G, who really taught about, you know, spiritual awareness and spiritual liberty. You know, he wasn't poor, but he was, you know, rich with them. But pretty much was rich within himself, you know, richness of self. And they, you know, lived in Gambia, and they learned spiritual discipline, something that they learned early from their dad, you know, so it definitely transcended when they got older. And, you know, they also, and then the great thing about it, too, is that all four of them are still creative individuals in their own right, you know. Taj, I think, has, you know, 3 girls, and he's a proud father. Hakeem still produces. Kyrie he's a producer, and he does production. And I think Bilal, I think, is an engineer. So these guys are still, like, creating and mastering their own destiny. So I pay homage to the boys. It's an honor to actually do this review, because I definitely enjoyed this episode. And if I missed anything, put it down in the comments. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on it. But I truly enjoyed these guys, and I wish them nothing but peace and prosperity and success in the future. So subscribe to my channel. Click that bell so you get notifications every time I drop a video. Also, follow me on all of my social platforms. I have them all listed in the description box. Also, like this video, comment on this video, and share this video. And I will be back with the next episode of Unsung. So until next time, everybody, take care.